Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
No, wow.
Come on, man. Oh, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
It's bullshit generalization. Many sequels have surpassed their original.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Underrated. We are the Undercast Company. I'm Alan Torres, and of course, as usual, my amazing co-host, Ariel Ortiz. I was going to say Ariel McDuff. Yeah, because I was looking at both of you guys. Ariel Ortiz, and, Derek Ortiz. I mean McDuff. Well, welcome back, everybody. So we're really excited because summertime's here pretty much. It's getting hotter, and we're going to be doing a new mini series, just like how we did before. It's going to be the summer of sequels. If you guys have been on our socials, we've been kind of promoting it here and there, and while we're here. And we're actually going to start off this week's episode with my pick, which is Scream 2. Pretty much, I believe it's one of the most underrated sequels, especially a horror sequel. And a lot of the time, you don't hear very often of a good horror sequel. A lot of the time, just like all slasher flicks, they usually get worse and worse and worse over time. But to the point where you just watch them because they're just campy and gory and just stupid fun. I feel like it is really important. I feel like really needs to be talked about. But so yeah, pretty much real quick, Scream 2 came out back in 1997 by legendary Wes Craven. Rest in peace. Written by Kevin Williamson, Neve Campbell, David Arquette, Jada Pinkett Smith, Jamie Kennedy, Liev Schreiber, a bunch of people. Timothy Olyphant as well.
I was about to say, don't
leave
leave out
I
my
almost
boy.
forgot. I almost forgot for a second because I usually I'm not gonna lie. The franchise of Scream, I know so much shit about, like trivia and everything. So I was like, all right, I know all these people. But when it came out though, successful. It was one of the rare times where a sequel came out and actually made a lot of money. If you don't know what Scream is, if not, Scream is essentially about Neve Campbell's character, Sidney Prescott. She essentially is getting, stalked by slasher guys in the Ghostface mask, and they're calling. This is when back in the day in the 90s where we didn't have caller ID, so they're calling on a mobile phone.
Why did you
or whatever,
have a cellular
and they're stalking.
phone?
Oh my god, yeah, exactly. They're like cellular phone and all that, but. Yeah, essentially, it's kind of like a whodunit slasher flick, and it's super meta. It's one of its kind of I wouldn't say ahead of its time because now we're in it, and I feel like Scream really influenced a lot of that kind of meta stuff. And this wasn't Wes Craven's first time with meta, kind of like storytelling. His New Nightmare film kind of did that as well, where with Freddy Krueger, instead of a typical Freddy Krueger movie, this was the actors like Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp just being themselves, and then Freddy Krueger stalking them in the real world. So that was his first foray. I want to honestly recommend as well to go watch. But yeah, so Scream 2 though is the sequel. This follows Sidney Prescott, who survived the first one, and a couple of other characters now in college. In the first one, they were in high school, so now happening all over again in the college, and again it's all whodunit, but it's just awesome. It's just kills or better storytelling, all that stuff. But enough, because I can talk about it for days. This whole franchise. I want to hear what you guys thought.
I ended up liking it. So this is the first time that I had seen Scream 1 throughout. I know the ending and stuff like that, with it being her boyfriend and then Matthew Lilly's character. But this was the first time I watched Scream 2 as well. And I enjoyed it a lot more than the second one. I think there was a lot more to it. The first one seemed like it went really fast. And then the second one seemed like it had a little bit more girth in it. It definitely did justice to the characters from the before ones, and made you spoilers, people from first one die in the second one, kind of. I'll leave it at that. And so when those ones died, you felt like, oh man, like why did you have to kill, like this one of our fan favorites and stuff like that.
I was not. He was not a fan favorite of mine. I was kind of happy when he died.
Well, it was more about the one that almost died, I think, too. Like
Yeah.
in the moment.
Which one are you talking about?
When James Kennedy died, I was like, good.
Oh man!
Aw.
How dare you?
I know.
So he's pretty much one of my favorite characters. Next to
yeah.
like,
No man, he's like this
in the
incel.
mask.
Like I don't know.
He's trying though. I mean, like
I'm
like...
shocked, man. I thought, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, I think they're both gonna like Randy.
Yeah,
because like
I
he's
Randy.
He's us. He's essentially us. We're big.
Yeah,
no, man,
yeah.
He's not.
No, he's no.
Well, I related to somebody
and he
else.
wasn't incel. He was getting some girls like in the party and stuff. He was getting them, but no, like I think like it was just, of course, like surprisingly both films, this one like a lot more, were filled with all these people that like I know, like I mean just like in gimmick roles, like freaking Joshua Jackson, like Kevin Conway, not Kevin Conway, what is his name? Charlie Conway from Mighty Ducks, like is in the classroom, like talking about movies, and he's just in that scene and stuff like that. And then you have Sarah Michelle Gellar. I don't know if this was before or after.
It's during her like big time in Buffy. Like this was kind of one of those movies,
but it was
where
before.
It was before.
I know what you did last summer.
I think so, because I know after Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer came out, like kind of after people were like, because the big thing with Scream, it kind of revitalized like the slasher genre for a little bit.
The teen slasher drama. But yeah, like so there's like all these different characters. They kind of pulled the same kind of like formula that they did in the first one at the beginning, of having these kind of like actors that you are well known. Like at that point, Jada Pinkett was like on the rise and like was very popular of a character. Omar Epps too was coming off of like Love and Basketball. So yeah, you have them kind of filling in that Drew Barrymore kind of character, especially putting Jada Pinkett on the poster, and then her getting killed. Yeah, and then her getting killed. I think it's such like, so that like clearly like, okay, this is becoming a meta thing, for this genre and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I definitely liked the kind of like, it was like a slight twist but rehashing of the first thing, because like the sequel has to follow the same formula, but there's like a slight change to that formula. So I kind of felt, I don't know if I like subconsciously had remembered and was told, because I was told like a long time ago that Timothy the Oliphant was the killer, but even from the beginning, like in that first scene with him, like in the classroom, like I was like, at first I was like, is it the teacher? And then he started talking, I'm like, oh no, it's him, kind of thing. And then the old reporter, the other reporter, like I kind of had a feeling like it was her, because she's kind of like, I thought originally that she was, because she's trying to become the Courtney Cox character, that reporter that gets the inside scoop. So she's creating the story, in a way. But I wasn't expecting it to be Billy's mom and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I definitely like enjoyed that ending, and the only gripes for me were the classic, like, oh come on, like you should have like at the end, why did you let go of the axe? Keep the axe and to run away with the axe and stuff like that. So there was like those tropes, and so it's kind of like, but then it's like it because everything else is meta, it's kind of like, did they keep it that way because of that kind of trope,
I feel like they did.
It's like,
They absolutely did, because in the first Scream, I remember there's a scene where Sydney, she's talking to the killer for the first time, and she's kind of like, oh, she thinks it's Randy, and she's like, I kind of hate it. I hate horror movies because the whole trope is stupid, where the girl not be like running up the stairs, she should be calling the cops and running out the door, but some big titty bimbo runs up the fucking stairs. She literally does that like 2 minutes later, instead of like, but the thing is, she was at the door, but the killer was there, so now she's like, fuck, I have to run upstairs. So that's the beauty about the whole franchise, is that it's like, it's making fun of itself in the horror genre.
It kind of like makes you reminded of like, okay, then the scary movie series came out, like, you know, to make fun of this, and it's like, well, like it's kind of making fun of a joke already. Like now that you think about it, and so it's kind of like, it gets more meta because of that, and like that's why it's like such the Scream franchise, even like, you know, it's coming back and stuff, or a continuation from, I don't know where they're leaving off, if they're going to include all the movies so far, if they're going to do a Halloween and just say, okay, up until 2 is canon. But yeah, I mean, it's just definitely like we said, it's spun off this like genre of slasher movies, you know, like besides, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, you got Jeepers Creepers and Final Destination coming into the mix with all these twists and turns kind of things. So yeah.
Yeah, I had also never seen any of the Scream movies, which I know
My
a lot of
God.
people were surprised. I know, yeah.
I'm very surprised you guys haven't.
This
Hey,
became
you know
a
what?
twist on
yeah.
you never seen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
I guess we just got to do a
two
twofer.
Yeah. So so I was like, okay, you know, I almost like, okay, should I just watch Scream 2 and go in blind? But I was like, you know, I'll watch the first one. I'm really glad I did, because, you know, this is a movie that definitely is like a true sequel. Like, you have to kind of have watched the first one, and then you get rewarded for like watching the first one. It is a continuation of it. When I watched the first one, I was like, yeah, this is good, but, you know, it didn't like, I wasn't like, I wasn't like caught up in the hype like so many people. Like, I was like, all right, well, you know, I liked it, but it's not like an all time. And then I watched this one, and I was like, holy shit, like, this is incredible. Like, I liked the first one, but I loved the second script. Like, it was definitely like, you know, like you said, Alan, like, it did what a sequel should do and improved in every aspect of the movie. I was like, okay, like, because I'm not a big slasher film guy, you know, and I think a big part of it is because, you know, they do fall into that kind of, you know, sequel trap where it's like, okay, like, here's the killer's coming back again, and they're just kind of like cheesy B movie, you know, just like, here's Jason, here's, you know, here's Michael Myers, whatever, they're just coming to get you again. Whereas these ones, I like that they kind of like mix in a whodunit element, like kind of like the original Friday the 13th, which they reference in both of these movies, like, and then, you know, like the I'm just gonna say from here on out, like, we're gonna spoil it, you know. So sorry, anybody, if you're out there, yeah.
Like I said, I wasn't going to spoil it, but then I started spoiling it while I was talking about it. So go ahead.
Yeah, but then, you know, with the mom being the killer, which is something they like, you know, referencing, you know, Jason's mom being the killer, the original Friday the 13th, that coming back around. Yeah, but I really thought this was just, and I was surprised too, because I was like, when I first started watching it, I was like, click, and it says 1997. I was like, oh no, 97. The first one came out in 96. Like that's, you know, like, when you hear that, you're like, movie that comes out like 2 years or like a year later, I'm like, that's not enough time to make a good sequel, make a good movie. But they fucking pulled it off. I don't know how they did it, but like, it was impressive, and like, just in my opinion, like, elevated everything. Like, the action was better, and like, you know, the motivation was better. The mystery, the whodunit element, I thought in this movie was way better, because in the first one it was just kind of like, we're just throwing out like a bunch of red herrings, like, Henry Winkler is going to be talking about slashing people up, so you think it's going to be him for 1 second, but then it's not. And in this one, it's like, okay, you actually get like a couple clues. Like, you get like, oh, somebody's recording them, and you see, oh, Timothy Olyphant, he had a camcorder earlier, and just like, you know, and so there was actually kind of it was more of a who's done it. Like, it was, that one was just kind of just like, okay, it was these guys, and there was no real, you know, clues that it was Matthew Lillard and whoever in the first one. And also, I felt like the killers in this one were like way more interesting and competent than the killers in the first one, because they were kind of like, in the first one it was just kind of like a couple idiots. They're like, end up cutting each other up at the end and stuff, and this one it's just like, Timothy Olyphant's like a fucking psychopath, and he's so good, and the mom is so good. And that's why, and like, I kind of had the same experience as you, Ariel, where I didn't know that Timothy Olyphant was in this, but I was like, I feel like he's got to be the bad guy, because he just has that charisma, you know? Like, what's the guy who plays her boyfriend's name? Hold on.
No, Derek.
Sydney's
Derek.
boyfriend?
The character's name is Derek. It's
Jerry O'Connell.
Jerry O'Connell. Yeah, I was gonna say Jerry
So
O'Connell.
he's, you know, he's kind of just a nice boy. I can't really see him being a bad guy, you know. And a lot of these characters, I'm like, okay, I don't really think it's gonna be like, you know, Jamie Kennedy or whoever, you know. But I'm like, Timothy Olyphant, he's just got that where he can be like real charming, but then he can just like turn on a dime and just be like, guess what? It was me. And like that whole rant he does at the end where he's like, movies are influencing this, and I really like how this is a meta movie about.
It's gonna rock the trial.
It was so good.
The other killer's like, dude, that's so 90s, and even then they're making fun of like the whole thing about the 90s itself with like the big trials. Like that was a big deal back in the day where like trials were like.
Yeah, like the OJ, but then also like on the other side, like video games are corrupting,
Marilyn
kids'
Manson
minds
and all that,
stuff like that. Yeah.
And I really love that they do the thing where they do in some movies where they're like, okay, now like the first movie is like becoming an actual movie in the sequel. I like that kind of trope, and they like play on that a lot. And
Stabbed.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
David Schwimmer playing Dewey.
Yeah,
Which was
and
like
they
I
talk,
found
like, about the
hilarious.
references to Friends and stuff. So like, oh,
Yeah.
Monica and Friends, and then what's his
Fucking
name?
Luke Wilson.
Luke Wilson. Is,
yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like,
Oh,
okay, like
God.
it's all fun.
it's just the way the cookie crumbles. That shit kills me every time.
But didn't he actually say that though?
No, he didn't say that.
no?
The first one
Yeah.
he was just like, Sydney, it's just me. I forget that actor's name. He has a really weird name. Street, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, Skeet.
Yeah,
Ulrich.
Skeet Ulrich.
Yeah.
But like he's just more dramatic and more like edgy, but then Luke Wilson's like, Sid, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I'm like, I fucking love this, dude. That's hilarious.
And I really just love how, like, the first one, like, okay, this is a meta movie about slasher horror movies. And I enjoyed that aspect of it, but I'm like, it's been done, like, better in the time since, like Cabin in the Woods, which you talked about, I think did it really well, or like something like why am I spacing? Hot Fuzz, like, is just a fucking great meta movie that does that kind of just like, well, how about catching those killers then? Oh, multiple killers, like, but this one is like okay, this is a deconstruction of like sequels, and that's why I think this is also a really good one to start off our summer of sequel series, because like if you want to talk about sequels, this was a sequel about sequels, and they have that whole scene at the beginning where they're in a classroom, they're like, well, what sequels are never as good as the original, and blah blah blah, and they're like kind of breaking it down and about how like, okay, well maybe some sequels can be better, and then later he's like, oh, what about Aliens or The Empire Strikes Back and blah blah blah, and I was like, I was getting really into it. There's I can't think of any other movies that like deconstruct specifically sequels, and I think that's why, because we kind of talked about like what we were going to do first, and I kind of recommended we do this one because I think this is like, of all the movies we're talking about, this is just like the most pure, just kind of like, this is a follow-up directly to the next movie. It picks up the threads, but it tells a similar story, but it does it in a unique, interesting way where it's like, here's kind of a similar story to the first one, but an improvement. And so, I mean, it's surprising me, like I said, that it was so rushed, because usually when that happens, like, I'm thinking, like, for example, The Mummy Returns, which is like a fun movie, but it's just a worse version of The Mummy, like, it's just like, okay, we do all the same things as the first Mummy, except it's kind of more expensive and more explosions and bigger, and there's an annoying kid. I
think they're both fun.
Yeah.
They're both fun, but like Mummy 1 is a fucking classic. Mummy 1 is incredible. Like, and then you also get stuff like The Mummy 3, which is like, it came out too late, and it's kind of like, I mean, I like The Mummy 3, but like, this is like, so it's amazing to me that this was so good because there was such a quick turnaround, and even stuff like, Liev Schreiber, who was like literally in one scene and didn't have any speaking lines, he's an incredible actor, and we're gonna use him now. I'm like, how did this all work out? But it worked out perfectly. It was great. I love the actors. I love the twist at the end where it's the mom, and it's like, holy shit, like, that, because you do have like a good setup to like, okay, this is Timothy Olyphant, but then you have another twist. It's like, there's the second killer, and it's the mom from the first one, and brings it back to that first one, and it is just kind of a cool like twist where it makes you like, oh man, so it all ties it together and it all works out, so it's not just like kind of random, it's happening again. It's like, it does make sense. And yeah, I think one of the best twist endings I've seen in a long time, this movie for sure. Just all in all, great sequel. This is a perfect sequel as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that what you are saying about it being rushed. I wouldn't be surprised because Wes Craven at this point already was like like a a staple in his horror and stuff like that, and like knew the sequel. I'm pretty sure he probably like, okay, I'm gonna make a sequel. Like like, okay,
not him, but the writer. Thank you. Yeah, he had like an outline. He had already planned a sequel. So like, I guess, but even with that, I'm surprised they were able to like shoot it so quickly and like write an actual script and they apparently had to do rewrites because some stuff leaked and stuff. But I'm very impressive that they had that quick of a turnaround and made such a good product that it is underrated. I do agree with you, Alan. Like, I don't hear people talk about Scream 2 as a great sequel, but it did still manage to almost get the same exact box office performance. It made a lot of money, and it did actually have a little bit higher critical rating. Like, they're both, it's like, I think it's Scream 1 79% Rotten Tomatoes, Scream 2 was 81 or something.
Really? I thought Scream would have had like 90% or something. Because I know Scream 2 had 81, but wow, that's actually surprising. But yeah, honestly, like they're just a great team. Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven, they just killed it. I just like literally that scene in the film class scene that like inspired me to like really get into movies. Like Scream 1 and 2 were so influential on me as a kid because I was just like, I was a pussy. I'm gonna be real. I was terrified of horror movies. I was so scared of Freddy Krueger. I was like, fuck that. Like, I never want to watch like a Halloween movie or Nightmare on Elm Street. And then Scream was actually on TV on Fox, and I was like kind of watching it like behind the couch. And then I was like, damn, okay, this was pretty good. I like this. And then Scream 2 had come out, and then I was kind of like, oh, I'll wait on it. I think when the third one came out, I watched it, and then I was like, oh, that was really good. But then I went back and watched Scream 1, 2, and 3 in order, and I was like, holy shit, the first two are absolutely amazing. I will say, unfortunately, Scream 3, since we're talking about sequels, I like it. It's nowhere as near as good as the first two. It does. I think Kevin Williamson was working on I don't know if he was working on Dawson's Creek or something. Like he was like everywhere in the 90s. And no, Kevin Williamson, the writer. I think
okay.
He was the writer of Dawson's Creek. Oh,
I want to say it was.
I didn't know that.
That's unexpected.
Oh, okay.
It was one of those WB shows back in the 90s, and he was doing like I think Scream and I Know What. He also did I Know What You Did Last Summer as well. So I think he was just like had a lot on his plate, and when Scream 3 came out, he was writing it, and he had this whole like, now we're gonna do a trilogy. Now it's gonna be like Return of the Jedi, all that stuff. And then he couldn't finish the script, or I guess someone else came in and kind of finished it for him, and it kind of ended up becoming what it was satirizing. And it felt like a generic sequel. There was a lot of stuff in that movie where the first two are grounded in reality. The third one kind of felt very like, because they have the voice modulator, and then now the third one, the voice modulator can be anybody's voice, and I'm like, no, that's kind of bullshit. It kind of it's a kind of lazy plot device, and unfortunately, I think it's a solid movie. It's funny. There's a Big Jay and Silent Bob cameo in it too, so I think that makes the Scream franchise part of the View of Skewniverse for Kevin Smith. So I don't know. That was always my theory. But yeah, and then Scream 4 I think is underrated as well. I think that one. I think it's the same thing with that movie you mentioned earlier. It kind of came out a little too late. It came out like 11 years later, and I like what they did in that one. They were trying to like do like the Paranormal Activity stuff, Blair Witch Project, and Saw, and like all that stuff where they're like, now it doesn't matter. There's no rules. Which that movie is still fun itself. I like the actors in that movie. Like Scream 4, I think is underrated as well, but it's nowhere near as good as like Scream 1 or 2. Especially Scream 2, because Scream 2, like you guys said, you guys hit the nail on the head, and it just hit everything like perfectly. Like it even has like a cheesy scene where you're like, you still can love it when Jerry O'Connell's character is like singing to Sydney and like professing his love to
Well, even
her.
that was like a pop culture like reference, like when Timothy Olyphant Top Gear or no Top
Gun, yeah,
Top
like,
Gun, yeah, Top Gun, not Top Gear, Top Gun, yeah.
But there's just so much fun to it. And then I also think one of the most terrifying scenes in the whole franchise is in Scream 2, where I believe it's Sydney and her friend. I think it's like her roommate or whatever. The cops get killed or whatever. They're protecting them because Ghostface was there, and then they crash and they're kind of stuck. Like the doors are locked, and Ghostface is in the driver's seat, and they're like, I can't fucking roll down the windows. I can't open the door, and they have to like go through the
window,
the back seat, through the back seat into the front seats, and they're just looking at him like, oh my fucking god, dude, and they're trying to get out, and like that scene, just so much suspense and tension, and you're just like, oh my god, like you're just terrified he's gonna wake up, and like that for me, I think is one of the best like horrifying scenes in the whole franchise.
And
No,
I was fully,
great scene. Like
yeah.
it really had me on the edge of my seat.
I had me on edge, but then there was a part of me where like you could just put him you could put him in a chokehold right now. You know, you understand that and stuff. Like I
don't know. You could just get away from him. You know, like
Yeah, I
your
think
roommate
that's-
said, just fuck the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned, you know, the classroom scene, because I thought that was a really, really great scene. And you know, the when we were talking about the characters we would relate to, like I related a lot more to like the Timothy Oliphant like killer character. What's his name, Alan?
Mickey.
Mickey, right? Like Mickey was great. You know, I loved him in how he's kind of just like movies, and like, you know, I love sequels. You know, like people always shit on sequels. You know, and like you know, sequels are hard to do. It's hard to like recapture that magic. You know, but like sometimes they can do it. And this one, and when he's like defending sequels, like yeah, sequels are good, and this and this and this. And then at the end, when he's just like, you know, has that whole rant about like he's like movies and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, if I was a serial killer, for sure, this would be me, right?
I can kind of see that too. I mean, I like that about it too, because I love sequels too. Like, I'm not one of those people that goes, oh my god, they're doing, unless it's a really shitty franchise, then yeah, I'm gonna be like, why the fuck are you doing more? But if it's like a big one, like, you know, all these Avengers movies and like comic book movies, I'm like, fuck yeah, give me more superheroes. But so I'm kind of like, I'm excited, but sometimes I'm like, Scream 2, but yeah. But yeah, man, I love Randy's character as well. Like, cause like I just felt like that. Like, especially in the first one, he's like, "There's a formula, you gotta follow the formula and all that shit." And I'm just like, "Yeah, dude, like I fucking get it." Like,
that's
no
the thing,
sex
like,
and all
with
that,
the
no
first one,
drugs.
like, that was the reason why he wanted to have sex with Sydney so hard, is because he wanted her not to be a virgin so he could kill her.
Oh my god, I never thought
yeah,
like that.
yeah, that was the whole reason why he was pushing it so hard.
That was something too that I felt like was an improvement in this movie over the first one. Like I was like, okay, cool. Like I get where you get to explain the rules and stuff, but it did feel a little bit like, all right, we're gonna stop the movie to be meta now and explain this. Whereas it felt a lot more natural in this one. It's like, okay, they're in a film class and they're discussing stuff. It's not just like, hold on, we're at this party, but let me tell you, there's a rule. Like that was a little bit like, okay, whatever.
You can't tell me, dude. That I love that scene too in the movie.
Fine. It's fine, but
it
was handled so much better in this one, is what I'm saying. Like in this one, when they're in a film class, like, and they're like shooting ideas off each other, and they're kind of making fun of each other. Like I'm like, yeah, this is my fucking jam. Like,
when have we not had that kind of conversation of like,
exactly,
while watching a movie of like,
yeah,
like,
but I don't get
Alan and Fred will go on like a tangent of like, no, this is why the Power Rangers like have to like be formed in this way and that.
That's
way.
what I'm saying. We're like the kids in the film class, you know, like we don't stop them like, with a bunch of other people. Let me pause the movie and tell like everybody else who doesn't care about this shit, here's the rules, you know. Like, but between between the nerds, we're talking to each other, you know. Like that's what it felt a lot more like. It's like when you're talking with your buddies rather than we're just telling a bunch of randoms who don't care, you know. They want to just go see the principal's murdered body or whatever.
Oh.
We'll say this though, I've been in both positions where, like, you know, I've been in a class, we talk about movies and all of us hanging out, but I have been also at parties where like there was other film buffs there, and like shit like that happens when you start talking. That, like, don't get me wrong, like I said, the film scene is one of my favorite, or the film class scene is one of my favorite scenes as well, in like all of cinema. But the ending of the scene in the first Scream where he's telling the rules is fucking perfect, because Randy's just like, oh, and the last thing, you can never say you'll be right back, because he won't be back. And then fucking Stu, like right on the drop, is just like, hey man, you want a beer? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll be right back. And that fucking cracks me up every time, and I love it. And I'm like, both of them are just fantastic scenes. But sorry, I'm like jerking this franchise off too hard, but.
But it's just like, yeah, I mean, I definitely was kind of hesitant, you know, watching the first two, because it's been so parodied and stuff like that, and stuff, and I thought that it was going to take itself a lot more serious than it did. I didn't know that they were going to go in the meta direction and stuff. So
No, yeah, you know, hilarious enough too. Scream was actually supposed to be called Scary Movie.
Yeah, I heard that.
But they thought it was too generic, so they were just like, "Oh, we'll call it Scream, I guess." And then there we go. And then the parodies of Scary Movie were like, well, that movie's a satire about horror movies. Well, let's just be a fucking parody and make fun of the satire of the horror movies.
And I love meta. Sorry, what was that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I honestly to recommend for people, like, if you end up going to watch the first 2 Scream movies, go give Scary Movie, the first one, a try, because I feel like that movie really gets swept under the rug from its sequels, which I like the second Scary Movie.
It's the second,
The first and second one are good. They're good movies. The ones after that are fucking garbage, but I feel like the first Scary Movie always gets like kind of thrown under the rug because they're like, oh, it's not the one with the ghost, like, and the giant joint or whatever. But I'm like, go watch the first one after the first 2 movies, because like it feels like it's Scream from another universe, because they actually follow the film very similarly, just fucking out there, like cartoonishly stupid and all that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But yeah, and I love, like meta stuff, so like and horror movies are pretty like iconic with like doing like really meta things and breaking down just like the mechanics of film. And I think that, there's a reason for that, and that, these movies both pull it off really, really well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you guys dug. I know we're doing a little extra homework on these podcasts, because we have to watch the first one if we haven't seen it. But for our listeners, I hope you guys can go out there and watch the whole franchise. Just decide for yourself. But spoilers, the first 2 are really fucking good.
Yeah.
But then go watch Scary Movie, and then if you're like, man, I need some more meta, watch Wes Craven's New Nightmare as well, just to get a little bit of that proto meta as well on top of it. But any other kind of meta type of films you guys would recommend?
I mean, like I said,
or
Hot
even
Fuzz.
TV shows.
Hot Fuzz is like incredible, because it's an action movie, but it does have those kind of like whodunits, and it's got slasher elements to it, and it's Edgar Wright, so he, like, everything is meticulously planned, and it's so like everything is so intentional and feels so funny, and there's so many just like little things that pay off early, like that are set up early, that just like show up later in the film, that it's hilarious. And yeah, I mean, all the Edgar Wright stuff, like especially the Cornetto trilogy, but especially Hot Fuzz, like that is a incredible meta movie.
Well, we always suck like trying to think about movies on the spot. But like, what is a meta movie? I can't think right now of a meta movie, but yeah, I mean, definitely like these are very surprisingly good. At least the first 2. But yeah, like I would definitely recommend this one.
Let me throw out one more too, and this is a movie that like people are kind of mixed about, but I really like it. Have you guys seen Last Action Hero?
Oh hell yeah!
I haven't seen it. Yeah, but I know
I fucking
of it.
love Last Action
Oh no,
Hero.
it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, and here it all. Okay, so it got something in this movie got me thinking about it. Is when they were making all the references to, like, David Schwimmer and like what's her name, fucking Jennifer Aniston and stuff. It's like, okay, so like they're making all these references to Friends actors, and Courtney Cox is a Friends actor. So in the world of Scream, is there a Courtney Cox out there? Like, you guys ever think about that kind of stuff? Like. What is, like, it's
all the time. It's like Jane Silent Bob Strike Back is actually kind of meta as well, because
definitely
because Ben Affleck plays, like, I think even the new one, Jane Silent Bob reboot.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of
Ben in Jane Silent Bob Strike Back. He plays he plays 3 people, like 2 people at least. Yeah, 2 people, but he plays himself, Ben Affleck, and then he plays I never remember his name. From Chasing Amy. Holden.
It's Holden McNeil.
Yeah,
Holden McNeil.
Yeah, so he plays like 2, and then in the whole Skewverse, he plays Loki. No, he's not Loki. He's the other one. He's
Bartleby, and Matt Damon's Loki.
Yeah.
So like that was that. So like with that, like I'm just like, okay. Like in Last Action Hero, they actually do like something with that I think is pretty clever. Is because he's like the kid's like who goes into the movie is like, you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's like, no, I'm just a detective. I'm not Arnold. There's no Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they're like, he's like, I can prove it. Let's go to a video store and I'll show you like the Terminator. And they go to the video store and they go and the Terminator, and it's Sylvester Stallone as the Terminator. So I was like, that's such a fucking good joke, Like, so, or like when Ocean's 11, where it's like, oh, like Julie Roberts.
Julia
character looks like
Roberts.
Ocean's
Julia
12,
Roberts.
yeah, with the
Or
Julie
Ocean's
Roberts,
12.
yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh, is there like is there Matt? Does that mean there's like Simon or whatever his name is looks like Matt Damon, and like does Danny Ocean look like George Clooney? So I always think about that kind of shit in the movie, and I just love the way they handle it in Last Action Hero.
Sweet. Well, you know what, guys, I'm really glad to hear you guys dug them.
One
'cause,
more
like-
thing.
Oh,
So
yeah, go for it.
so
Yeah,
like
go for it.
since we're on the topic of Scream and it's coming back, how do you guys feel about that? Like, I know that you were just saying like you said Scream 4 felt like it's like too far past its time. Do you think now with it coming back it'll like kind of feel a lot more of a nostalgic kind of factor to it, or do you think like it'll kind of be a little bit more of like, oh, it's a little too late also?
I personally, I was excited when Scream 4 was announced, and I saw it, and I love Scream 4, and I really like what they did with that one. With Scream 5, though, because that's the kind of the beauty about cinema is that there's always new ideas coming, even though, yeah, we're like rehashing and remaking a lot of shit, but there's always kind of those movies that like, kind of like break the mold, and they come out kind of, because like now in the 2010s, we've had a pretty good plethora of movies, especially like A24 horror films. So I can totally see them doing like Midsummer, Hereditary, It Comes at Night, whatever, all those movies. I think that kind of might be a good thing for Scream as well, because they can at least always kind of wait a little bit and be like, all right, now we can do a new thing. Because with the first one, the first two had the benefit of like, okay, we have 80 years of horror movies prior, and then Scream 2 was like, well, we have fucking 100 years of sequels. Scream 3, sadly, like I said, is kind of not great, but with Scream 4, at least it was like, all right, now we have a slew of like 2000s movies. So now with Scream 5, I'm hoping that they're going to do something with like I said, the A24 movies where they're like, all right, now there's a new type of genre horror film, slow burns. Everything happens around the end, like, because like I said, all those new horror movies that everybody loves nowadays are becoming influential. So I'm hoping, yeah, as long as like I saw the Scream TV series and I saw the first two
Wait,
seasons.
what?
And then there's a Scream
TV
TV
series.
series on MTV.
Mhm.
Like is it live action?
Mm-hmm.
It's live action. It doesn't have any correlation at all with the movie universe. It tries to be its own thing, and I won't lie, the first two seasons were solid. Like you can watch them. They were kind of doing the same thing, but I hated the fucking mask. They changed the mask. It just looks like stupid as fuck. And then they were like, all right, so we're gonna bring the classic mask back in season 3, and then I guess they completely said, fuck the first two seasons. We're just gonna not give a shit, and we're gonna start anew, and we're gonna bring back the classic mask. And I'm not gonna lie, after that, I was actually tested, and I said, I'm not gonna watch it. I was like, fuck this. It's okay. Like, if you're like, I need a little extra Scream in my life, then go watch it. It's nothing to write home about. It definitely has that MTV feel to it, but it's very MTV CW-ish. But yeah, I'm very excited for the next Scream, because at least this one's gonna have like all the characters coming back, and poor Sydney's gonna have to deal with all this bullshit again. So yeah, I'm excited. I think, like I said, I think that's the benefit of the Scream series, is that if you wait a little while, you're gonna get a little more stuff to write upon.
Yeah.
And do. Yeah.
And that's one thing I think this movie does well. Like I talked about, like it kind of like how it tied back to the first one. It's like whenever you have a movie like this, like Jaws, or like Jurassic Park or something, it's like, okay, like how does this shark keep attacking the same like family or same community or whatever? And it's like, okay, how's there like now another killer coming after Sydney again? And I thought that they did a really good job of justifying the sequels, because you're like, you watch The Lost World and you're like, all right, like this is Lost World's a good movie, but it's like it didn't need a Jurassic Park sequel, and it's good, but it's nowhere near as good as the first one, And it's like, okay, they have to come up with all this convoluted reason for Jeff Goldblum to go back on the island, like Ian Malcolm, who would never want to go back to the island. They gotta give him like it's a girlfriend is there, and then your daughter, who you never mentioned before, is like snuck on this stowaway, and it's like, all right, well, But this one, it did feel like natural, like this actually made sense in the universe to happen.
And oh shit, I was about to say something about that. Um, I probably said enough, but anyways, I will say though, I recommend watching the franchise. Um, Scream 3 is still fun. It still has like a lot of good stuff to see, even though it does kind of start going a little more to the fictitious. I mean, it's fiction, but it kind of goes a little more to that, like when you watch certain horror movies where they just kind of start breaking their own rules and their own
Yeah.
logic. But Scream 4 kind of takes care of that and goes, don't fucking worry about that. New cast. But I will say, go watch Scream 4 just for the intro, because Scream 1 and 2, you're like, okay, there's a character who you think's gonna be in the movie. They're the cold opening character that gets killed, like it's Supernatural or some shit. Scream 3 does the same thing, but it's kind of already overused. It's nothing new. Scream 4 does something really fucking cool, and if you really liked the whole stab movies, the in-universe movies, they do something so fucking cool in Scream 4 with the cold open. Like, I honestly, like, when I saw it in the theaters, I was like, oh, okay, that was cool. What the fuck? And then you're like, oh, okay, that was cool. What the fuck? Wait, what the fuck's going? Like, you literally start questioning, like, your reality for a moment. Like, they really did a great job with the meta cold opening. Just go watch Scream 4 just for the opening. And it's a great movie too, but that cold open is pretty fucking cool too.
Nice.
Like it's worth watching all the movies to get to that. just like how you were saying, yeah. Yeah. Any last words though?
No, yeah, I mean, I would, recommend it. Definitely watch both. I know this is double homework for this time, but watch both Scream movies. I would say for sure.
Yeah, no, same. Like, I mean, they tie in so much into each other, like the first one into the second one, that you have to like watch them together. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys. I'm really, really happy to hear you guys dug them. They're very, very dear to my heart. Like the next one, my next pick is also very dear to my heart as well. So I'm very excited for that one too. But I mean, obviously, you guys pick pick them as well. But like this franchise has always been very, 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 very close to my heart. So I'm very, very happy we got to talk about it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I hope you guys listened and had a good time with it. But yeah, pretty much thank you again. And I know you guys got extra shows you guys want to plug, so go ahead and take it from there.
I'm host of another podcast under our undercast company called You've Never Seen ? It is a podcast about movies that are considered part of cinematic history or pop culture history, and either myself or my guests for the past couple episodes with Derek and Alan is a movie that we've never seen, and if we get our not interpretations, but our opinions on them after our first viewing.
And then, I'm doing a show, it's wrapping up soon, season 1 at least is, called Gateway Episodes, where I introduce somebody to a new show, or somebody introduces me to that show via a iconic episode of that show, and we'll be doing the season 1 finale, me and Alan, on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and then we're going to take a little break from that. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that. And then just also want to mention before we wrap up our Patreon, we do have a Patreon now, and we do have a Patreon exclusive podcast where we just kind of, once we reach a certain amount of goals, we will do new episodes. So we've done 1 episode so far, and just want to give a shout out to our newest patron, Damian Sherman, who just donated at the $3 level. So we're giving you a shout out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Damian. We love you, man. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and he's, I've talked with a little bit. He's a pretty cool guy. Actually, I'm going to be a guest on his podcast. His podcast, Can I Say Something? So you guys, that's another. It's kind of a lot like our show. It's a kind of conversational podcast about movies and TV. So I'm going to be over there in a bit. So definitely check that out and check his stuff out. And if you can support us on Patreon, just either you can get a shout out for $3 a month, or if you want, you can just donate $1 a month is the lowest level. And I really appreciate anything that you guys do. But if you can't do that, we appreciate you just listening as well. So thank you, guys.
Be amazing, everybody. Have a good rest of your day, or night, or whatever time of the you're listening to this episode.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening. And we have a lot more sequels coming this summer. The whole summer is all sequels.
Lastly, I typically say take it easy on everybody, but today I'm going to say, what's your favorite scary movie?
All right, that's enough. That'll be a wrap. The sequel discussion to be continued.